Good afternoon, my name's Paul Grant. Today is the 21st of April and we're going to go through and do a practical session for evidence for the unit HLTPAT005, which is a part of the health and first aid training sector with pathology, and it's number 5 revision. So there we go. Here's the 21st. There we go. 21st it's got there. If you can see it, 21st of April. Anyway, so part of the assessment process will be to visually watch me do a drug and alcohol. Not so much an alcohol, but definitely a drug test. Only just 5 minutes ago, we had young Mr. Bluey, commonly known as Dale Richardson, came in after a post-incident. As for a post-incident test, which was a bit scary because he was driving a truck, which another truck didn't give away. They missed, and thank God that everyone's okay. So we use, out here at Nathan River Resources, we use Western Diagnostics as our testers, and we are at the moment using, which does change from now from time to time. I've got Lane WorkSafe drug kits, and as you can see here, which we'll add that to, and I'll send that off, being a actual, but I'll fill out a dummy one and place that into and send it off as an email. So young Dale came in, he showed me his evidence, which was a license, a NT license, which I wrote down. I also know every one of the guys out on site, so I actually know Dale. I've seen his pre-employment medical and looked after him quite a lot. Not just from a medical perspective, but as a human being, we tend to look after people on site. So we get his name, his date of birth, his sex, male, female, and then one of the biggest questions, which I always state to people, and even though part of our policies is to give me a medical declaration of the medications that you are using before you come out on site. Some people don't do that, but we then have a question within the last 14 days. Have you taken any prescription, non-prescription, over the counter, under the counter? Have you taken your wife's medications? Because I need to write them all down. Whether it's good, bad, or the ugly, let's write them down. Let's not worry too much about the way the drugs work. We start getting into biology and all those sorts of things. So needless to say, young Dale was using a bit of Restivit to try to sleep, which is a natural sleep assisting tablet. He was on some B2 agonist, which is some Ventolin for his asthma, and he uses an NSAID, which is a Voltaren 25. We write those down. We then ask Dale and we take out, and I let them open up the pack, and they will take out the kit and hand me the kit bag. In the meantime, and well before that, we have got Lulu in the toilet. We have taped up the handles and everything in the toilet, and also sort of, tape down the toilet itself, so as people can't open and access water. But that's pretty obviously to see if we've got blue lube in there, and it comes out with a fairly blue stained urine. No one to this day has done that to me, but there'll always be one. So with our test cup, we then go and ask Dale to fill up to a level. That level we need filled up, because if we do have to split a sample, then we need enough to be able to send off. Dale takes that in. Depending on the policy of the company, I have never had a company policy that says I need to actually physically see them urinate into a cup. So again, we just leave the door open, and if they're not comfortable with that, I'm happy for them to close it. We'll set it up where they can come out, and they'll put the cup back onto a position that I've placed. All right, and before we even take away and test any urine, we'll get the person to declare that this is the drugs I'm using, and no more, no less. And within the document, there is a section that says I am the donor, and I do sign off, and I'm happy for you to test my urine. I do go into and explain quite a bit about the test itself, why we want to sort of test how the temperature of the sample. Everyone gets the understanding now. COVID's been around for a while, so everyone starts understanding that their body temperature is X amount. And obviously, if I've got urine coming into a cup, that my urine should be around that mark as well. But obviously, we lose a bit of temperature by having a cold. It could be a freezing cold day. It might take a little bit longer to bring out the sample. It might take a little bit longer to actually produce a sample and have a little bit and so on. So we do have ranges there where it can vary. The other thing too is that obviously if we get what we call a dirty sample and someone puts some fluid in there which isn't theirs and it's cold, then we are not going to get a reading at all. So straight away that raises red flags, and without saying too much, that sample will be sent off. 99 times out of 100, it'll be within that range, and then we move on. We'll then sort of utilise the test strips, and we'll take away from the mirror, and we'll then open up, and then we'll go through the reasoning of what the strips are, and also explaining to them about the control line being the top line, and then negative and positive on each one of those. We'll also go through the adulterants, and I do explain to them what an adulterant is, what is useful, and what people in the past have done to try to hide drugs that they're using. So again, without going into a full explanation of what specific adulterants there are, we also do get people who try to dilute a sample, which will show up in creatinine and their SGs especially, which is their specific gravity. 9 times or 99 times out of 100, where we are anyway, we do come up with mostly negative test results, and then the person will be asked to empty their sample, and off they go back to work. That's most of the time, and that's what we're looking to do, is to try to get people to understand that if they are using drugs, then you need to know what they're on, especially if they're prescribed, and if people aren't using sort of recreational drugs, that's what we're trying to look for. People who may cause us a hazardous environment back in the workforce. So what happens if we get a non-negative? Okay, so, and that has happened, of course, and we have 2 types of non-negatives. One non-negative is that, I've declared my medication, my expectations are that this certain drug will come up as a result. And the other one is that, hey, you didn't say anything and it's come up, and then, depending on policy within a company, whether they're stood down or it really comes down to the site itself. Most sites, if you've declared your medications, I'll talk to your supervisor, and depending on your work and your work history and how you are, drugs are given by doctors to make us all nice and balanced and have that nice homeostasis, and everyone to be on that level field. So, having a drug in your system isn't bad if it's been prescribed and it's doing the job it's supposed to do. So moving on, if we do have a non-negative sample, we will then take evacuate and we will use it and we'll take out sample. These are great little vacuums within a nice little tube, which just takes up the fluid, and it's not too much messing around. Obviously, within our environments, we would use correct PPE as well, which I'm not doing because we're not doing it. From there, we will label everything correctly. There is a process as well, and within, depending on what kits you have, they'll have different labels, and again, coming up with different seals. And seals will then be signed off, and everything's pretty self-explanatory on the seal. They'll be signed off, they'll be put over top of a test tube. So we'll seal it, we'll get people to sign on, and the collector and the donor will sign that. That will then be put into a bag. It will be sealed, and then another seal will go onto that as well. We would then take our chain of custody forms. I usually just photocopy it. I'll place one into the bag. Depending who you're sending it to, really comes down to their process as well. But most times we'll get the vials, we'll have it sealed, we'll put them together, we'll put it in a bag, put another seal, and then we would seal up that bag with, again, with description on there. Again, we've got negatives there. It would show a positive or a non-negative sign in, and then we would get a chain of custody form specifically for the company that they're sending it to, and that label number will go onto that, and that would go with the sample itself. So with the sample, again, we need to set up a company to go and test it for us. It will be put into a nice cooler. We will then seal that, and there's different types of esky type there with the bags, and we can put ice packs in there. And that would be sent off. And again, policy will drive, and also depending where you are, because we are very remote, it gets a little bit problematic to get things off straight away. And policy also will drive how long this person has to wait if they are kept on, again, especially out on site. Do we send them home? Do we keep them in their room? Do we do this? Again, HR policy driven. For us out here, if he has declared his medication and supervisor and myself sort of deem him quite competent to do his job, he'll go back to work. If we're concerned and it's not been a declared medication, he will then be actually sent home until the results come through, and we'll then, HR will deal with that. But from our perspective of doing everything correctly so no one has anything to fall back on, we want to make sure the person is the person. We want to make sure that we ask them all the relevant questions about medications they're taking. We want to make sure the sample is dealt with correctly. On here, we've also got, tick boxes for, what the creatine level was, what the temperature was, is there control lines, and also the drug itself being THC, cannabis, benzodiazepines, amphetamine, methamphetamine, cocaine, and opiates. That's what we test for on this one. There are some other tests that other kits will do, and usually the more you pay, the more it will test. The collector will sign, the person will sign, and the site, the times, and everything's got to be done correctly. At the bottom of it, obviously, if they're sent off, then we have, fill at the bottom, which is the chain of custody as well. From there, we will then access their website and download the results. and depending on the result as to what the person will do after that. So yes, it's a job. I mean, most times we have fairly all negative results, which blend in with what we're trying to do from a cultural point of view of people not taking drugs that they're not supposed to, and not so much catching, but sort of working out who is and who isn't doing this correctly. Yes, I've had plenty of people come up with non-negative results, and there's all sorts of reasons, but let's let the policymakers draw what we're supposed to do from that point. This is all about doing the test correctly, having understanding that even these certain drugs that we test for, we do have cut-off points, so there could be some drugs in their system. I also get people saying, wow, it's a very light line there. So it's black and white. If there's a line, there's a line. Doesn't matter how light or how dark. So if people think that they might be on something and it's nearly there's no such thing. It's black or it's white. There is either no line or there is a line. And that either becomes a negative or a non-negative result. Biggest thing with training people is that, don't take this personally. If people have come up here and they're showing, a non-negative result for an opioid, then it needs to be tested correctly. If they've declared that they're on using some Panadol Fort and we've got a bit of codeine in our system, then that's okay. It'll come back with that amount. If they're taking something else and it doesn't come up in accordance with what they've declared, then again, HR will drive that and see what we're going to do from there. But most times, people declare it correctly. It'll come up and we'll send it off and it'll come back as being that drug. What are the pitfalls? Look, sometimes there's some, some combinations of drugs which, we don't even know yet. We know most of them, that they may come up as an amphetamine or a methamphetamine. I had a young kid once that had some really, really strong antibiotics, never touched any of these drugs before and came up with methamphetamine and just broke down because he actually didn't do it. But, again, a lot of that comes back to the person testing and trying to explain that, this could be a non-negative or a false negative result. And, if you're not taking anything illegal or anything undeclared, the chemist will find out exactly what it is and then give us a reasoning behind it. So hopefully I can upload this onto my YouTube channel. Hopefully then they can pass me out, as I've been doing this for about 10 years. 10 years writing policies and procedures and teaching people how to do this process. All right, again, Paul Grant, date of birth 17/7/62, and this is for Adept training, HLTPAT005, and this is my video for you guys to have a look at and deem if I'm competent. All right, thank you very much.